Hey everyone, and welcome. Today we're going to unlock a kind of superpower for business, probability. And no, this is not going to be your high school math class all over again. We're going to show you how really understanding the odds can turn all that uncertainty out there into your biggest strategic weapon.
All right, to get our heads in the game, let's start with a classic. You roll 2 dice. What's the most likely number you're going to get? It's a simple question, right? But this little game of chance is the perfect way to start thinking about probability.
So let's break it down. This table shows every single thing that can happen, from a 2 all the way to a 12. And here's the key. Even though there are 36 possible combinations, they are not all created equal. Just look at that frequency column. You are way more likely to roll a 7 than you are to roll a 2 or a 12. Why? Well, because there are 6 different ways to make a 7, but only one way to make a 2. And that right there is the heart of probability. Some things are just more likely to happen than others. Okay, so the dice roll gives us a good feel for it, right? But to really apply this to business, we need to know the actual rules of the game. These are the core principles that let us calculate and use probability in the real world.
This brings us to our first big idea, classical probability. And you know what? It's exactly what we just did with those dice. The probability of something happening is just the number of ways it can happen divided by the total number of things that could happen. So for rolling a 3, there are 2 ways to do it out of 36 total possibilities. Simple as that. Now, there are 2 golden rules you just have to remember. First, probability is always a number between 0 and 1. 0 means it's impossible, it's never going to happen. 1 means it's a sure thing, it's absolutely certain. And second, if you add up the probabilities of every single possible outcome, they have to equal exactly 1. So, we've got the basic rules down. But let's be real, the true power here isn't in rolling dice. It's about making sense of messy, real-world data. And that's where we start connecting events. Think about it. In business, things are almost never isolated. We're always trying to find connections. Does a customer's gender influence which brand of soda they buy? Does buying one product make them more likely to come back for another? Answering questions like these is how you build a real strategy. Our first tool for this is something called joint probability. And honestly, it's exactly what it sounds like. What's the chance of 2 things happening together at the same time? For instance, what's the probability that a customer is both a female and prefers brand 1? And here we can see it in action. An energy drink company built this table from their survey data. Those numbers in the middle, like that 0.09, that's a joint probability. It tells us there's a 9% chance that any random person from this survey is a female who also prefers brand 1. It's that simple, because 9 out of the 100 people fit that exact description. But what if we already know something? This is where it gets really, really powerful. It's called conditional probability. This is all about the probability of A happening given that we already know B has happened. We're basically using new information to get smarter about the odds. Okay, so this is the official formula. I know, it might look a little intense at first, but I promise the idea behind it is super simple. P of A/B just means the probability of A given that B already happened. And to find it, you just take the probability of A and B happening together and divide it by the probability of B happening at all. You know, the best way to get a feel for a formula is to just use it. So let's apply this to a classic business problem, figuring out what customers are going to buy next. So here's how it works. We're using what we know to make a better guess. See, in this table, we're not looking at all 200 customers anymore. That's the key. Our focus narrows down to just the 13 people who bought an iMac first. Our world just got smaller. Now we ask, of that specific group, how many then bought an iPad? The table shows us the answer is 2. So the conditional probability is simply 2 out of 13. This is huge for stuff like targeted marketing. Okay, we know the rules and we know how to connect events. Now we're ready for the really cool part, using these ideas to actually model the future with something called a probability distribution. I'm willing to bet you've seen this shape before. It's the classic bell curve, right? Well, its formal name is the normal distribution. And what's incredible is how many things in business, from customer demand to project deadlines, naturally follow this exact pattern. And because it's so predictable, it becomes an amazing tool for forecasting. So let's walk through a problem step by step. Imagine a company knows its monthly demand looks just like that bell curve. On average, they sell 750 units a month, and typically that number varies by about 100 units up or down. So with that information, we can start asking some really smart questions. First up, what are the odds that in any given month, demand will be 900 units or less? This is a super important question for making sure you don't run out of stock. This visual shows us exactly what we're after. The entire area under that curve represents 100% of all possible outcomes. Our goal is just to calculate the size of that shaded orange area. That's the probability of every possible demand outcome up to 900. After running the numbers, we find the answer. There's a 93.32% chance that monthly demand will be 900 units or less. Now that is a number a company can really plan around. It helps them decide exactly how much safety stock they need to keep. Okay, let's flip the question. What's the probability that demand will be more than 700 units? This helps a business figure out the chances of having a really good month. To figure this out, we're looking for the area to the right of that 700 mark. Now, we could calculate that directly, but there is an easier trick. Since we know the whole area under the curve is 1, we can just find the smaller area to the left of 700 and then subtract that from 1 to get our answer. And when we do that, we get 69.15%. So this gives the company a really strong signal. There's almost a 70% chance that they'll sell more than 700 units in any given month. That's absolutely critical info for sales forecasting and planning. So just think about the journey we've been on. We started with a simple dice roll. We learned the basic rules, and we built all the way up to a point where we can actually forecast what's going to happen in the real world with a ton of confidence. And that's really the ultimate takeaway here. Probability isn't just about math. It's a framework for thinking. It lets us measure risk, spot opportunities, and turn that big, scary unknown called the future into a calculated, strategic advantage. So I'll just leave you with this question. In your world, what's one future outcome that feels unpredictable right now that you could start to predict just by taking the time to understand the odds? Thanks so much for watching.